对于苹果的成功，人们总会习惯性的总结出无数的理由，而我相信，无论列一个多么长的清单，零售店在这份清单当中的位置，应该是无人可以撼动的。在它之前，没有人会相信一个电子产品的零售店居然可以开在市中心，居然可以创造比顶级奢侈品珠宝还要高的销售额。这使得它不仅仅重新定义了高端零售，也给苹果的品牌形象提升提供了强大的动力。而缔造这一成功的，除了乔布斯之外，还有一个人居功至伟，但却常常被人忽略，他就是 8Inc 的创始人，著名设计师 Tim Kobe。他曾经和乔布斯并肩作战12年，在2017年的11月，他来到了深圳。这一次随他一块儿到来深圳的，不是新的苹果零售店，而是小米全球首家零售旗舰店。为什么是中国？为什么选择小米？小米和苹果有着怎样却又不同的魅力？我们非常有幸邀请到了 Tim Kobe 先生来和他聊一聊他和设计的故事。Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this afternoon. And I know you are a very famous and established designer around the world and very successful entrepreneur. So I want to kick off this interview with some big questions. What is your opinion about the profession of design to the world? I mean, as well as what kind of social responsibility should designers take on?
Yeah, I think today probably design it's achieving a level of importance that maybe it hasn't historically.
That's right.
Particularly in business applications.
Yeah.
But it's primarily because we're going through so much change as a result of technology, as a result of new products, new ways of interacting with people. That puts pressure on all of the businesses to be successful by being more relevant to people.
Yeah.
And good design makes things more relevant to people. And I think that because this era that we're in, there's pressures on almost every business sector. So from that perspective, of course, as a proponent of design and the value of design, the types of things that you can achieve for a business with a well-designed product, well-designed interaction gives it substantially better competitive advantage.
Steve Jobs once famously said, a good design is not about how it looks, it's about how it works.
Absolutely.
It has enlightened me for so many years, and I want to personally ask a great designer in the world about this. Which direction do you lean towards when you're facing a very tough decision, aesthetics or functionality? We have to choose one.
Yeah. Well, I think there's the form follows function.
Yeah.
But I think that the human outcome sort of beats that. It's greater to focus on that objective, and form and function today is baseline. Almost everybody, in order to compete, provides a function.
Yeah.
In the old days, that was more relevant. But again, I think society has progressed. The customers become more sophisticated. The interactions that they have with an app in one space, they expect in the other space. So I think the expectations have become more challenging, and form follows function is it's really a very old way of framing the conversation of design. I went to school at Art Center College in Pasadena many years ago, and it's a great school. The sensibilities that they teach you there are probably different than you might run into in other programs. But a big part of it is 12 years working with Steve has a huge impact. His point of view of what it does versus what it looks like to start with.
It's interesting.
That's a real driver.
He's not a design professional.
No.
So where does it come from to him?
I think that many people talk about him in terms of looking at design and style, but he really understood. I would say he was more of a customer experience savant.
Yeah.
He understood what people were getting from that. He wanted to make sure the product was beautiful, but if the product and the software together didn't create a great experience, then the product was a failure. It didn't matter how beautiful the product was, and if the software was great, but nobody used it, then it wasn't a success either.
I was hanging out with my designer friend the other day, and he told me that in the creative industry, people say it's important to ask a question, than answering one. So especially asking the right question.
That's right.
So how do you know it is a right question to ask? And to you, what is the right question to ask when you are doing a project?
I think a lot of companies will develop a product because they've developed a specific technology. So that can be anything from Google Glass to a new chip design. I think that you tend to focus on the technology first when you're a company that makes technology. And I think it's actually a trap. I think that you can get caught up in the hardware discussion, in the components, and lose sight of why your technology matters. And if you look at most startups today, so there's 95+% failure rate. I heard the other day 42% of the reason why startups fail is they don't serve a need, something that people need. And unless you're looking at your customers, your outcome, the people who you want to interact with it, if you're not providing something relevant to them, your business chances are far less.
Yeah.
You have a far less opportunity in terms of being successful.
Okay. You have started several companies throughout the years. I'm now running only one company. Steve Jobs once ran two great companies at the same time. So how do you plan your day? I mean, it's a very daunting task for me to run a successful business. So what's your secret?
Well, I think we've tried to set up basically a sustainable type of ecosystem for our business. On one hand, we're doing strategic consulting for the existing companies of the world. On the other hand, there's still problems, there's still gaps, there's still opportunities that we see that we'd like to address without necessarily having a client to begin with. So the other side is we're looking at creating, incubating, and developing solutions for the next new businesses.
Yeah.
And what happens in our company is our compensation model is different than most design firms in the sense that most design firms are paid per haircut.
Yeah.
But for us, we're building equity in these startup companies that support the bigger idea. So what we learn on one side, we can apply to one part of the business. What we learn on this side, we can apply back to help the existing companies.
So to me, it sounds like you're providing a solution to a company, not just the design of a particular objective. And having a consulting company in your ecosystem will help you to think from your client's perspective to understand better about the objective that they're trying to achieve through your work of design. Yeah.
I think when we're hired, most of the companies who hire us believe they've hired us to work for them.
Yeah.
In fact, we believe we're hired to work for the people that they want to connect with, which means we have to have an understanding of who those people are.
Yeah.
We have to have some empathy for the types of challenges they have. If we can build a meaningful relationship through the design, then their business outcomes will be met. And so that's sort of how we get to the businesses that we're working for becoming successful. So
now I want to move on to your collaboration with Apple and Xiaomi, especially after all these years. It's very difficult for people not to compare your work with these two companies. It's hard to imagine for us to work with somebody as great as Steve Jobs. So what is your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably a couple ways of looking at it. There's parallels between Apple and Xiaomi, and there are differences.
Yeah.
We have 12 offices around the world now. So we have a team still in its 20th year working with Apple. We were hired originally by Steve when he came back to the company in 1997, and we worked with him every week for 12 years. So when he passed away, I moved to Asia and began to grow our business, from Australia to Beijing, basically. And when you look at the comparison of the companies, when we first started with Apple, I would say there wasn't an Apple style. So many people today associate the Apple brand with a particular look and feel. But when we began, their products were sort of all over the place. And I think that there really wasn't a human touch point in the sense of the stores that started to really express the values, tell the story of what Apple was about. And so when we started working with them, that was an evolution, and there was a maturing that happened with the company, with Steve, with the whole team. And I think that, in a way, I see some similarities as Xiaomi is maturing. I mean, we first met with Bin Lin and Lei Jun and those guys in probably 2012, and have had conversations and working with them together in our Chinese offices for the last 2 years.
Okay.
And I see the evolution of the team. There's this fairly young body of employees. They're growing very fast. Similar thing happened with Apple.
Yeah.
But then when you look at some of the design aspects, the aesthetics and things like that, I think to me there are very distinct differences. Apple has a fairly narrow range of products that they offer. Xiaomi has a very diverse range of products.
Yeah.
And we were talking today that the way we think about the retail stores that we're working on for them is really not as retail stores, but we think of them as portals. And that the old discussion of physical versus digital, that kind of polarity, we see you having the ability to engage in mobile devices, whether you're in the store, outside of the store, or any point in between, and that you can make that purchase whenever you want. So where some companies feel that they've been compromised by e-commerce, we try to bring the two together.
Okay.
And that allows the customer really to select what works for them when it works for them.
I read from the biography of Steve Jobs that at the very early stage of developing the Apple Store, you guys built a real-size mock-up at somewhere in Silicon Valley. So that's true, right?
That's true.
That was a true story.
Yeah.
And did you build a real-size mock-up for Xiaomi as well?
We did.
We
did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what we recommend with any of our clients is that we get to a certain point with models and drawings, but you really can only understand physical space by being in physical space. Being in there.
Okay.
And it does a few things. It enables different people to have input, and part of what we try to work from is a number of people providing inputs into the design, whether that's customers, whether that's board members, whether that's executives in the company. But it's hard for them to imagine what it's really like unless you build a physical representation of it. So those prototypes become really important. And we use prototyping as a methodology in I would say probably 90% of the projects that we work on.
Oh, okay.
And we make things out of cardboard, we make things out of paper. They don't have to be fully finished things because it's really, the dynamic of the user flows, how people interact with it. Those things get better understood if there's a physical space to try.
Yeah. I know that you first met Lei Jun a couple of years ago. He has been a personal mentor of mine, as we talked about.
Yeah.
So, what was your first meeting like, and how did he introduce to you the company? And so I'm very curious about your impression of him.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think what led up to meeting Lei Jun was initially meeting the design team and knowing them from the connection on the education side. That led to meeting Bin Lin and hearing from him pretty in-depth understanding of the company, where they want to go. And then in meeting Lei Jun, there were a few key things that he wanted to make clear. And I think that what was great was it had simplified it down to really respecting the different approach that Xiaomi has in terms of other companies here in China in particular, and recognizing the value of the community that he's built. And I think that to me that was the most striking, that there was really sincere kind of deep value that he's brought to the company, that I find reflection of a sort of dedication of somebody who wants to have a great impact, who wants to have great change. And that's, you want to work for people like that. You want to be with people like that.
So did he remind you something from your first meeting with Steve?
A bit. I think he was more polite than Steve was the first meeting.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, it was similar. You know, what we got from Steve over time was the dedication was there, and I think there's that parallel, that dedication into improving things. With Steve, there's a great frustration that technology didn't deliver on its promise just by focusing on the technical side, but you know, that shift towards the human outcome was very important. And I think when I see what Ben is doing and what Lei Jun is doing with the company, the fact that Xiaomi is bringing really, really high quality design to the most people, that's almost inverting the Western pyramid of luxury being a small exclusive part of the pyramid. And so because they're inverting that, more people have access to better quality design. It doesn't have to cost more. It should cost what it costs to make it, but the amount of money that they're putting into considering each of the products, that's really remarkable, and I think ultimately it pays out. It's of benefit to the most people as a result.
We want to find and have more traditional Chinese input into our design work that may be more representative in the world about this nation and this culture. So do you find anything very interesting during your work with the Chinese designers?
So one of our clients is a company called Shaoguan Tea, and you know, if you look at drinking tea, it's probably as old as Chinese culture. And you look at the way that tea has been presented to people, sold to people, how it's consumed in society, and the founder of Shaoguan Tea decided he wanted to look at that in a new way. And so the challenge is keeping the tradition and the legacy that goes with drinking tea, you know, where it comes from, how it's made, all of those really rich aspects of that. And they asked us to help then launch their product. They had the designers here who are all from China, created a very interesting way of thinking about the packaging and the delivery, and they needed a space to sell the tea and to think about, you know, how to retail it. But you know, here's a case where it's probably one of the most the biggest area for disruption, and they were able to make that shift without it being a Western influenced behavior, but really coming from a real pure Chinese interaction. And they were able to update it and create a very fresh new way of thinking about tea. And it doesn't lose any of the cultural legacy. It doesn't, it really enhances all of the positive things that come from tea, the healthiness, the quality, well-being, the idea of gifting it. You know, there are many really interesting aspects that they've created, and that's really taking the value of design and applying it to a very specific problem in China, and with Chinese designers creating something that's specific to China. So I think that you're going to see more and more of that. I don't feel like it's something to fear, that the Western sensibilities might be influencing Chinese sensibilities. I think it's a question of the intelligence that they apply to that solution really gives meaning, you know, to the craft and to the tradition, and they do it in a way that's incredibly fresh and interesting. So to me, I'm always optimistic. So I think that you know, design can provide great solutions if people consider it enough.
Thank you very much, sir. I can't wait to see more exciting works from you and Xiaomi.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
在我的书架上总是摆着很多不同类别的书，但是每次看到设计类书籍的时候，我脑海中的疑问总是特别的多。因为设计不同于任何一个学科，它没有坚固的标尺去丈量，但是却有着磅礴的力量，让你感受到震撼。这场对话酣畅淋漓 ，Tim 解答了很多我心目当中的疑惑。事后呢 ，Tim 也告诉我说，这是他接受过的最棒的访谈之一。就像我们开头所聊到的那样，设计是一个承担了很大社会责任的学科。用访谈中的一段话来讲，那就是设计该如何让我们的生活去变得更美好，这才是每个设计师应该去不停发问的正确问题。 在今天之前，很多人会认为 Tim Coby 选择小米是一个偶然，但我相信今天之后，大家会认为这是互联网时代的一个必然。聚集全球最顶尖的资源，来共同铸建我们的新国货之路。